This is the program is about what Cambridge brought out in 49 to 54, and we have I've brought a 49 to 54 catalog here. If you want to leaf through it and see, they were gearing up in the late 40s to introduce a lot of things, and it's amazing how many things that they introduced in a 5-year period. Quite a few new molds. Quite a few new molds. Not a lot of new patterns, but a lot of new molds. And I've sort of tried to do this the way it's shown in the catalog, because these salesmen's catalogs originally, they added to them. So in 1950 they added pages of the things they'd introduced that year, and in 51 they added pages. And so the catalog is sort of set up in a numerical order of how they introduce things, and I've sort of tried to do that here. There are a few exceptions to that that I'll tell you about, but the first thing that was new for 4954 was the 301 Caprice stem line, and we have a nice sampling of it here: a goblet, an iced tea, a claret, a 5-ounce foot of tumbler, a juice, a cocktail, and an oyster cocktail. And the difference between this line and the Caprice line is pretty striking. The bowl shape is different, and the stem line is a fairly plain, actually 4-sided stem that was originally called Simplicity. It does not come in blue that we know of. It only comes in crystal, and it was an attempt to modernize Caprice. The 4954 catalog shows on black pages the items that that were not introduced in that period but were still in the line. So items from the 4041 catalog were black and white in the catalog, and then the white pages were the ones that were added from 49 to 54. And this was the page of Caprice that was added. The next major line shown in the catalog is Pristine. Old line came out in the 30s, got huge in the 40s, and then proceeded to get smaller. And there were a few things introduced with the 49 catalog in Pristine. The primary one was this, which looks like a Cambridge Arms candlestick, which later became a Cambridge Arms candlestick. And this sort of a setup, which was used as a relish and also used as a condiment tray. And they also made a bigger one that was a Lazy Susan type relish. And those were the major additions to the Pristine line at that point. The first major line that came out with the 49 catalog was Cambridge Square, which you all know of. It has a square base. And we have a nice sampling, a hurricane lamp, a large sugar and creamer. The stem line, which was designated 3798, has a square cube in the stem, and this came out that year also. Interesting 2-light candlestick. And they did do some decorating on Cambridge Square. Here's a beautiful cigarette set that is gold trimmed and has a gold fleur-de-lis on the cigarette holder. And then we've got two here with burning cigarettes etched and gold encrusted on them. This was a major line for Cambridge. They had a lot of trouble with it, a lot of bubbles. My understanding from the workers was that they had 25% acceptance on it, which means 75% of it was scrapped, what they made. So it made it a little expensive because they had so many seconds. The modernism people love it today. The people that buy modernism just love Cambridge Square. The next major line to come out was Cascade. The heaviest piece that Cambridge ever made is this baby that weighs about 12 pounds, and it is large. And then the big tray is made out of the same mold as the punch bowl. It's a great piece of glass. It's so beautiful. Cascade was not a large line like Cambridge Square, but it was an interesting line. There's a jelly compote and a pickle dish. One of the hardest pieces of the line to find, the cigarette box, which is pretty cool. There was a full stem line, no cordial, of course, or parfait in Cascade, and a really interesting candlestick that looks like something Heisey with a Cascade candle cup stuck on the top of it. It's the only piece in the line that carries this scroll. It's very interesting. I forgot to bring the colored pieces. They did play around with color in Cascade. It was not production. Here's a wonderful pistachio cocktail. In the museum, we have a Carmen goblet and a Tahoe blue goblet and an amber ashtray. They did play with color, but it was not in the line. We brought a few of these original advertising pieces that hang in the hallway in the museum for you to see along with these lines. Another line that came out was reintroduced was Martha Washington, which they now called Heirloom, and they changed some shapes. The stem line changed to this ball stem effect, and they did add pieces. This oil and vinegar was added to the line, and this individual sugar and creamer was added to the line also. The next major line to come out was called Corinth, and here is an original advertising piece. And Corinth is characterized by an optic that ends in a point and then a scallop and a point with the optic and a scallop and a point. So everything 3900 line basically has these scallop and points, and most of the major etched lines, Chantilly, Wildflower, Rose Point, Candlelight, Portia, that were made in this time frame started appearing on Corinth 3900 line blanks, like this bowl. They dropped a lot of the standard 3400 and 3500 shapes. There was a stem line developed to go along with it. This is the stem line that was developed to go along with Corinth, and it is called the Corinth goblet, the shape. This is Chantilly. Here is a jelly compote with the same stem in Wildflower. And believe it or not, we forgot to get a piece of Rose Point. We don't have a piece of Rose Point tonight. This is terrible. Portia salad bowl in Corinth, and an Elaine ice bucket in Corinth. There were some things borrowed from the 3400 line, one of them being this barrel tumbler. They now called it 3900 line, though. They didn't call it 3400 line anymore. There's a great piece in Chantilly, the stick butter dish. These are hard to find. They were made in Rose Point, Chantilly, Wildflower, and Elaine. The Elaine one seems to be the elusive one. We've got a couple ice buckets, a plain one. The things that were actually designated as Corinth were plain. They were not decorated. The items that were decorated were just designated as 3900. Here is a cut ice bucket in 3900, and this is an enigma. It looks like a 3900 line top on a Decagon ice tub, but this is light emerald, and it's signed, which would indicate early to mid-30s. So maybe they were playing with this 3900 line early on. We're not sure. This is unexplainable. These ice buckets were retooled out of Decagon ice buckets, and they reshaped the edge into a 3900 edge. Unusual piece. This is a 3900 line bitters bottle. And the difference in a lot of 3900 line is they took those corners, those four corners that you see on 3400 line, they took them off and added a heavy optic to it. This has a beautiful sterling footont. It's a great piece. Little Epergne in 3900. This candlestick was new to the line. It was made out of an older 3-light candlestick, and it has the Corinth stem in the middle of it. Wonderful little 3900 line individual sugar and creamer. Another completely new mold, the sugar and creamer tray. This is not the bottom of the butter dish. It is a different piece of glass. They did add a 3400, it was never 3400. They added the little juice barrel to the 3900 line. So really interesting candlestick with the Corinth stem. And this was called a convertible. Turn it upside down, make a little compote out of it. Or a candlestick. Pitchers, they're sort of tough. Most of the 3900 pitchers do not have the 3400 corners on them. Another way to tell them is, I suppose as a money-saving thing, they did not etch the ice lips. On the older 3400 pitchers, these will be etched clear up to the top. As you can see, all this lip is plain. And on the older style, this would all be etched, and there would be the 3400 corners on them. A few etchings were introduced during between 49 and 54. The first one was Rosalyn, as opposed to Rosalie. It's Roselyn. It's sort of a cross between a rose pointy Chantilly looking thing with a lot of scrolls. It was not a good seller. It was put on 3900 line pretty much. This is a 3900 line iced tea, or 3779 was the number for the Corinth stem line. Here is one of the old standbys, a 3500 relish with Rosalyn on it. And a cordial. Great piece. Great piece. The major etching that was introduced in this time frame was Daffodil. And Daffodil is a very popular etching and a hard one to find. We've got some great, great examples. The whole stem line, beautiful vase, gold encrusted pieces. This belongs to the museum. This was given by the California Study Club to the museum years and years ago, and every daffodil collector would like to have this. Pretty little vase done in gold, and a beautiful candlestick done in gold. It's surprising for the time frame when things were getting plainer and more modern that they were gold encrusting so much of the daffodil. We've got an original flyer, advertising flyer, and we've got a pamphlet up here that Cambridge gave to prospective buyers. Daffodil became so popular that Rogers came out with a daffodil silver line to match it. And it actually says daffodil right on the back of the silver. It's a pretty line. This was so popular they made hollowware. There's a tea service and candelabra and a Welland tree and a covered vegetable dish, all in the silver. Pretty line. Very, very popular. There are quite a few daffodil collectors, and I don't think any of them are complete. We've got a couple of them here tonight that I know of. And it's hard to complete a set of daffodil. When I first started dealing Cambridge, I had a punch bowl. I had a daffodil pristine punch bowl. Never forget it. I don't know where it went. I've never seen another one. Wow. Color had, a lot of the color had disappeared out of the line in the 40s. You know, during the war, they stopped Royal Blue. There were a lot of things that they stopped. They continued Crown Tuscan and Moonlight Blue pretty much all the way through. But a lot of the colors got dropped, like Light Emerald and Peach Blow and Willow Blue, and got dropped in the 30s. And by the mid-40s, a lot of the colors were being dropped, like amethyst and things like that were getting dropped. And so we're talking about reintroduction in some cases, like ebony. There was a reintroduction of ebony pieces. This is a Charlton decorated piece. This is a Cambridge decorated. This is gold wood lily. It's a great pattern. Great pattern. They did make a little bit of Cambridge Square in plain ebony. You don't see it very often. And this is an ebony cigarette box This cigarette box came out someplace in the mid-40s in Rose Point, but in colored ebony it came out after 49. This has a sample gold decorate on it. It's not etched. It's a surface decoration. Major colors to be introduced were emerald green. What's the difference between emerald green and forest green? Well, emerald green has a little more yellowness to it, just slightly. You got to get them together to see the difference. There's no rhyme or reason to what they made in emerald. It seemed like they picked a few pieces of 3400, a few pieces of Caprice, a few pieces of Cascade, a couple pieces of 3900, and of course they did the nudes and the swans. And the interesting thing at this time frame is the vases and ivy balls and nudes that they made were all made in all one color instead of a crystal stem and foot like you usually see. The swans were brought out in emerald, in carmine, in mandarin gold. They would all be style 3 swans, and there was a 3-inch, a 6-inch, and an 8-inch. They didn't make them in any other sizes. Beautiful Caprice 1338s, one of my favorite things in color. Wonderful Charlton bowl, decorated bowl. This was the high point of Charlton's decorating of Cambridge, and you see quite a lot of it in Crown Tuscan and Emerald Green done in Charlton decor. This decorated Charlton candy box, I'm not exactly sure when they made this. I really don't know whether this was this period or not. This may be earlier. I'm not sure. And another major color to be introduced along with emerald green was mandarin gold. All the same pieces were made, with the exception of this was made in all gold. And that I know of, the emerald one has a crystal stem and foot. And again, in the keyhole vases and the ivy ball and the nudes, they made the whole thing in gold. Kind of cool. This is unusual. Cascade candlestick in mandarin gold. They didn't introduce moonlight in this period, but they were making it. And I just brought a few things. They reintroduced the Jefferson line in mandarin gold, emerald green, and moonlight blue. This is an iced tea in Jefferson and moonlight. There are a few pieces of carmine known also. It's a very, very unusual moonlight blue Cascade vase. This is probably not production. One of the major pieces they introduced in Corinth was the cake stand. You hardly ever see these. They made a round one and a square one, and they have the standard Corinth stem line to them. This is quite rare in color. They sort of reintroduced carmine, and there are not a lot of things from this time frame. The swan is the major thing from this time frame in carmine, but shown in the catalog is this pristine vase and this pristine candy box. And they also at this time introduced simplicity in carmine, which again is like the Caprice stem line with the square stem. And this is an interesting line they brought out at this time. This is Tuxedo. Tuxedo comes with a emerald green foot, a carmine foot, an ebony foot, and a crystal foot. This is a sherbet. This is the water tumbler. This is the iced tea. This is the juice, and there is a cordial in that line. This is 3103, interestingly enough, with a carmine stem. They didn't do a lot of this in color. The Simplicity line also came in all moonlight blue, stem, foot, bowl, in all moonlight. They weren't exactly introduced in 4953. There were a few items in the line before this in Cambridge Arms, but the actual full-blown Cambridge Arms line came out with the 4953 catalog, so we've included it in our program tonight. This is an original advertising piece showing different uses of Cambridge Arms. They marketed it for flowers as well as food. I just brought a few of the more unusual ones tonight. This is a entirely gold trimmed set, which is quite rare. And in this time frame, the pieces were the vase arm, the 7-inch ruffled vases, the candle arm, which held peg nappies and or peg vases, and the 3.5-inch candle base. Those were the original Cambridge Arms pieces. Over the years, things started to get added to the line, a medium candle base, a taller candle base, but originally these were the basic pieces. Beautiful emerald green set. These colored sets are a rarity. These are not something you see every day. Smoke, which of course is from the reopening period, but I couldn't resist showing off Smoke Cambridge Arms. They also made Mandarin Gold and Moonlight Blue, and then they also cut them in Harvest, and this is King Edward. The cut sets came out with an arm that has zipper cutting along every side of the arm. Was something that they did a little extra for the cut sets. This is a laurel wreath cut peg vase. Obviously they did laurel wreath set. I've never seen the whole set, but here's a vase. And then here is an etched vase with columbine on it. It's got to be, that's the only piece I've ever seen. There is a possibility that some of these vases were made for mounting companies to make little wall vases in little cast iron hangers, or I've even seen a little clip, a little ground clip thing that you put a vase in and held one vase. So some of these oddball vases may have been made for companies for use other than in a complete Cambridge Arms. Here is a Saturn cut peg nappy. It's the only piece I've ever seen. This is a rare decoration. It's called Saturn. The rings are completely concentric. They don't spiral or weave. This was considered part of the Cambridge Arms line, is a large hurricane which fit into the peg nappy in a pristine ball, and it was sold this way. This one's got the original salesman's tag on it, or it was sold this way. And the birds were made in emerald green, Mandarin Gold, and Carmine. Oh boy. They're horrifically rare. They really, I don't know of 5 of them. They're that tough. These were introduced this time. This is a P49, which would designate it as a part of pristine. Calla lily candlesticks, and interestingly enough, these are all cut. This one is cut thistle. This one is cut, is it silver maple? Is that right? Silver maple. And this one is cut harvest. And generally they have the same cutting on the bottom. But this one has more of a laurel wreath style cutting, and these two have a vine type cutting on them. This one has the addition of a gadroon dimple effect cut all around the bottom and around the top here too. Real neat. Any questions about Cambridge Arms? You could go on and on and on forever about Cambridge Arms. This is basically what they were doing in this time frame. In the reopening 55-58 period, they did add a number of items to the line, different shapes to it. Some of them were candles that had been in the line that they just added on. There is a strange arm known with an acorn in the middle of it instead of a candle cup, and we think it may be the forerunner of this candle well thing. We're not really sure about it. Any questions? Hope. There were a number of cuttings introduced in this time period. And we've got a really great sampling thanks to Mike and Lisa Strebler, the king and queen of cuttings, uh, which I think are one of the best things Cambridge did, and they were expensive when they were new, and they're really undervalued today. And Mike did a lot of, or else Lisa maybe, Lisa did quite a bit of studying to try to get almost every one of the cuttings that was introduced in this time frame. This one is 1064, which never got a name. It's very much an offshoot of the Windsor cutting. And see, they've taken all the 3400 corners out of it. And here is another one, and this is 1065, and this has not been polished. And when they cut, then they dip it in hydrofluoric acid to polish it, to make it shiny. And this one has not been polished. It's called a highlight cutting. And this is so cool. This has got a sample. The cutter has cut 1065 right on the jug. Pretty cool. Other cuttings that were introduced at this time frame, the later Star, which has the bevels at the bottom. The older Star didn't have the bevels. Here is the older Star. Star number 4. There were a bunch of Star cuttings. These are daiquiri cocktail glasses. This is Lansdowne, which is one of the Waterford cuts. And I think this is lattice, is that right? Yeah, this is lattice. And this is just little tiny lines that are not polished cut in it. Pretty glass, wow. Corsage, which looks like the old Moss Rose cutting. This is on 3116. Unusual piece, it's a claret. Fleur-de-lis on a Tall Joe. Unusual to see a Tall Joe cut. Cool. Ivy, which is a highlight cutting. They cut the leaves and polished them, and then they overcut and didn't polish it. So you've got shiny cutting and gray cutting. Harvest, one of the major cut lines for Cambridge. This is a highlight cutting also. They cut all the leaves first, polished them, and then they overcut the tassels of the wheat and didn't polish them. Pretty pattern. This is the one I never can remember. Is this Autumn? No, this is Southwind. It is a highlight cutting also, part satin and part shiny. This is a bowl that was introduced in this period. This is a pristine bowl, and it was meant to go with these calla lilies. Comes in 2 sizes. This is the smaller size. This is the 10. There is an 11 that's very rare. This is a Manhattan cut decanter, and the whole stopper's been cut to match the bottle. This is, we don't know who, we don't know what. It looks like Flame or Autumn with a pineapple cut right here. I'm positive it's a Cambridge cut. I think it could be a sample. I'm not sure. Oh dear. Cambridge Rose? Yeah. I always have trouble with this one. Cambridge Rose. It looks like, sort of like a thistle. Pretty cutting. And this is the one I never can remember. Granada. I wouldn't say Glendale. Granada. This is an unpolished cutting. It was made earlier on as a number, but in the 54 period, they gave a name to it. There were quite a few cuttings introduced on what I call plainer ware on the 7966 trumpet. This is Rondo. The cutters always said this was the hardest one to do because if you got off a little bit, then you ran out of glass to put the spiral on. And if it was crooked, you could tell if it was crooked because when you turn this, it works just like a barber pole. This is a water goblet. This is the claret, I think. Now this says a 5-ounce juice in Rondo. This is an oil and vinegar bottle in Rondo, which later became a part of the Sonata, was called the Oval line. This is the only thing I know of in Sonata that came out in 49-54. The rest of it came out after reopening. This is a flame, and you seldom ever see a piece of flame. It's an unpolished cutting. This is an iced tea in 79-66, and this is an iced tea in Harvest. This is quite unusual to see Harvest on this stem line. A few related cuttings. Saturn, like I showed you on the Peg Nappy, which is just concentric rings. It's had to be hard to do. And the two other spiral cuttings. Swirl, which is, I think, 5 or 6 little tiny lines cut all together. And then this is the one with the 3. This is Delhi, like Delhi, India. And it was a polished cutting of 3 little lines in a spiral, as opposed to this one, which are unpolished lines, swirl. This stuff looks like it's etched, but it's actually cut. Surprisingly, for this time frame when things were getting plainer and the cuttings were getting more simple and things were becoming more modern, they brought back gold encrusting back out, which doesn't seem like the kind of thing that you would expect for modern glass. And one of the lines they brought out was American Beauty, which is etched and filled in with gold. And this one belongs to the museum, and this one has the original factory label on it, $152 a dozen. So this thing was wholesale, was $13.50. This $27 piece of glass in the 50s in a gift shop, $4 is expensive. So this was mighty expensive for that time frame. This line was introduced then. Gold wood lily, like the ebony plate I showed you. This is a iced tea in the trumpet 79-66 line. This is a surface decoration. It's not etched. This is an interesting pristine iced tea in gold laurel. And this laurel is different from the earlier laurel wreath. It has a little flower. And this is etched instead of being cut. One of the prettiest things they introduced at this time, Talisman Rose, has a highlight etching first and then a gold overlay over top of it. This is the water goblet. This is the footed tumbler. And this is a claret in Talisman Rose. Most Talisman Rose is stemware. We do have a pair of candlesticks in the museum. It's a very rare cup in the pristine line that was meant to hang on a bowl. Very, very unusual cup in Talisman Rose. Another piece of American Beauty. The interesting thing about this line and that ebony one that I showed you, this is a 3500 line blank, and they were taking that gadroon effect off of the edge and calling it 3900 line. And it was basically the same mold. They just took the bumpy edge off of it. Another etching they introduced that very seldom ever see, and they must not have made much of it, is Columbine. Is generally always gold encrusted. Got a nice 6004 vase and individual pristine sugar and creamer in Columbine. Probably one of the prettiest etchings they introduced was the butterfly, which depending on the size of the piece may have 1, 2, or 3 butterflies. Some of it is all satin finished. This is an old etching that appeared on perfume bottles that they brought out and put on crystal. The last etching to be introduced, and introduced long after, probably around 53, long after the Rosalind and the Daffodil, is Magnolia. Very modern looking etching. This is a very nice martini jug that belongs to the museum, and a 3900 cruet, and a simplified pristine relish, and a cordial on simplicity. There were some other interesting stem lines introduced at this time. Probably the neatest one is Sweetheart, which didn't last very long because it's so fragile right here. It broke too easily. And later on, they changed it to the Aurora, which is a double heart stem that is much thicker. There isn't a lot of this around. Another interesting line they came out with is Circle, which is kind of a takeoff on Square, only it's a circle on the bottom. And this is the Cordial. Melody, is that right? Melody is basically 107966, low sherbet, with a thick, pristine style stem on it. And Melody was etched in Dawn. And this is an etching. We have an iced tea, a sherbet, a cocktail, and a cordial. It's a great line. And also a plate, which I think is very rare, and the martini. After the floral style cuttings were brought out, they brought out even plainer, more modern ones. This stem line came out, I think it's called Cathedral, if I remember right. This is Joan of Arc, which is basically a fleur-de-lis. Ambassador, this being the plainer Ambassador. The early Ambassador came out in the 40s, has lovebirds on it. This is called Silver Wheat, of a takeoff, kind of a cross between Tropical and Harvest. And this is Tropical. For years, I thought this pattern was called Tropical Rock because on the top of the page it says Tropical Rock Crystal, and I thought it was Tropical Rock, but it's actually Tropical, and it's a really neat palm tree cut on. This is on Simplicity stem line. They used the Simplicity stem line a lot. This is Leaves or Autumn on Simplicity. This is Lynbrook, which was named after Lynbrook, California. There was a very large jewelry store out there, big account for Cambridge, so they named that in honor of their town. Lily of the Valley Cutting, that came out in this time frame. Festoon, and it's very, very reminiscent of Lynbrook, but it doesn't have the little flower on it. These are all on Simplicity. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure on the time frame on this glass. I don't know what to say. It's definitely a Cambridge etching. I think it's not a production etching, and it is a piece of Cambridge glass. But I'm not sure exactly when this was made. By the look of it and the quality of the etching, I would say more 30s or 40s, probably. A little more age. In 54, they ordered the molds for Caprice Punch Bowl, Caprice Cake Salver, Caprice Stick Butter Dish, as well as some other molds we have never seen. The mold record book indicates a punch cup with a hole in the handle, a 10.5-inch dinner plate, a cordial decanter, a syrup pitcher. We've never seen any of them. It also lists the 6004 vases in 2 sizes with Caprice Optic, as well as the 9-inch keyhole vase with Caprice Optic. We've never seen any of them. And the last thing in the mold record book is this compote, which we had never seen before, and it's finally showed up. Came from a worker here in town. And this was ordered in February of 54, this mold. And it's basically a 3700 line goblet stem with a blown Caprice nappy put on top. So the only one I've ever heard of. But in 54, they did order a whole bunch of new Caprice molds, some of which were made, some of them may have not been made. This book, you may want to look at it afterwards, is real interesting. This is all of the mats for newspaper and magazine advertising from the 53-54 period. It shows all the new lines: Cambridge Square, Daffodil, Rosalind. It's very interesting. These are what they made the advertising print off of. They'd send one of those to the newspaper, and they'd use that for their ad. The last two colors to be introduced in this time frame, ebon, which is basically usually Cambridge Square, that is made on ebony and is sandblasted. It is not a typical acid finish. It's smoother, and yet it has a more pebbly effect to it when you feel it. The Cambridge Arms, we're not sure if that was production or not. There's no list for it in the price guide. Came from a worker here in town. We don't really know. They did several decorations, birds, very, very modern, plain birds. And this is a very, very unusual, pristine, round vase done in ebon with the birds. And they also did star. They introduced this cigarette box at that time, and it has an ashtray lid on it instead of the plain lid. And this is another shape they introduced in this time frame. It's called the canoe ashtray. Pretty cool. Comes in crystal and amber also. This is wonderful. Oh, ebony bowl with silver leaves, yeah, etching on it. Usually this is on crystal filled in with platinum. And this is an ebon piece that's been etched through. Really pretty. Wow. Great piece. These vases look like, almost like they're Mandarin gold. They made Mandarin gold vases. The last color, milk glass, which was kind of an afterthought, came out in '54. It did not sell for Cambridge. It really did not sell. There are some things pictured in the catalog that do not exist. We're not even sure. They made some samples, which Cindy owns quite a few of, for the catalog, but we're not sure that they produced them to sell. Yes? Oh yeah, this is great. Ebon with a Japonica style enameling on it. That is great. Wonderful. This would have been Walter Googold doing this at that period. Definitely. I have a cigarette box done the same way. Milk glass was the last color. It did not sell. It was like emerald green and Mandarin gold. They just pulled a few pieces of Caprice out, a few pieces of Seashell, a few pieces of Mount Vernon, a few pieces of Everglades, a few pieces of Martha Washington. Just pulled items out of different lines and tried to make. Milk glass was really selling in the 50s. You know, there was Ethan Allen blonde furniture, and milk glass is what you bought. You bought milk glass Fenton, you bought milk glass Westmoreland panel grape, Hobnail, you know. And so Cambridge jumped on the bandwagon, and they fell right off of it. It just really did not sell. Interestingly enough, they sent it on consignment to stores. They were so avid to sell it that they sent it out to the department stores for no cost and hoped they sold it, and it came back like crazy. And my understanding was there was a whole train car load of it. And there was a place on the way to Zanesville called Pottery King. On the left was Pottery Queen, which was the old Weller showroom, and on the right was Pottery King. And they sold Roseville and Hall and Shawnee and McCoy pottery and things that they could not, the pottery companies couldn't sell it, and these places along the road bought it at a discount and sold it cheaper. And my parents and I always went to the YMCA or the YWCA for dinner on Sunday after church, and we walked into Pottery King one day, and here was a wall of this stuff. I mean, a whole wall of it. And I said to the lady, I said, where'd that came from? She said, we bought a whole railroad car of it from Cambridge. And I said, how much is it? And she said, it's $4 a piece. So we bought a sampling of the large pieces. We didn't buy the little pieces. And it went on for years that they had it to sell, and we kept going out there and buying it and taking it back and trying to sell it. And today, actually, a lot of it is not real easy to find. Charlton did choose to decorate some milk glass, not very much. This is a very rare swan. Here's an oval seashell bowl, decorated the same way. Cambridge did gold trim some of it. This is probably fairly unusual, this size in milk glass. A lot of it was seashell pieces. This is an unusual Mount Vernon salt and pepper in milk glass. Everglade stein, seashell seafood cocktail. They made Mount Vernon goblets and sherbets and a water tumbler and a juice. Caprice, they made 2 sizes of vases. The cruet, interestingly, in milk glass. Cascade, the tall vase. Mount Vernon candlesticks. There are 4 or 5 pieces on the page that have never showed up. The cake stands never showed up. A few parts of Cambridge Arms have shown up in milk glass. They are shown in the catalog, in the nappies and vases in milk glass. The stork has never showed up, the stork flower frog. There are a few honey boxes out there, not very many. And of course, Cindy has the powder pigeon and the Scotties. Those are the only ones we've ever seen. Any questions about milk glass or anything at all? Yes, Sandy?
Where you were talking, I'm sorry, back where you were talking about the circular cuttings, there's a very tall, slender piece that you didn't talk about. What is that?
I don't know what to say. The connection is not a Cambridge glass connection. So I don't feel it's a piece of Cambridge glass. It's extremely high quality. LaFleur was cutting Rondo, and it was the only cutting I know of that Eddie did not change. When he did Cambridge cuttings, he changed them so they wouldn't fool people. Rondo was the one he did not change. And I would say this is probably West Virginia glass specialty that Eddie Griffith bought and cut Rondo on at LaFleur, would be my reaction to it. The connection is different. I don't know how to tell you to do this, but I can tell the way Cambridge applied this to this, the connection. And it's not a Cambridge connection. It's very high quality glass. It's very high quality glass. I don't know. I don't recognize the shape. Do you? It's a very modern shape. And I think it's Eddie's work at LaFleur probably. Yeah.
Lynn, for a company that was seemingly in real trouble, starting to decline, why did they launch so many products, and why such a diversity, particularly in the cuttings?
Mary Martha told me that they grabbed at anything they could grab a hold of. And of course, they had the big cutting shop there, and they had mold makers that were not paid a lot of money. And they were on staff, and there was a number of them. So to make more molds, no big deal like it is today. Where a mold costs $8,000 or $12,000 or something like that. They were just paying men to make it, and the metal was cheap. So I don't know what to say to you, but I think they were trying anything they could try.
And then you won't like my next question is, did they have any winners? And how in that time frame did they determine something was successful or not successful?
Did they have a winner? No.
Did they have winners?
No. They did not. The only thing that won for them was their bread and butter, the etchings. Rose Point Wildflower, Chantilly, Diane, Candlelight portion. Those were the only winners that they had. None of this stuff sold in quantities. None of it sold in quantities. I mean, I think you will find that this time frame, there's less of this time frame actually out there than there is, say, of the 40s or the 30s. I think there's much less of it out there. Yeah. But I think they were trying anything they could do. And we know at the reopening, virtually, they were chopping stuff up and doing anything they could to come up with anything that would bring them money. So it's pretty amazing all the molds they made in that time frame. It's pretty amazing, really. Yeah.
Lynn, you were saying that they were gearing up to introduce the 3900 line. And, it first shows up in that 49 catalog. But when the mold records, I think, indicate that they were starting to order those molds back in the early mid-40s, 43, 44,
Yes, sir.
45. So when did
Yes,
they
sir.
actually introduce that line earlier than 49?
It probably was in the trade. It was probably out around 48, but it didn't appear in the mid 40s. I mean, it was ordered. It was ordered. The Caprice pieces they ordered in 54, the majority of them were not made and sold until reopening, even though they were ordered in the 49-54 period. There was a number of Caprice things ordered in 53 and 54 that were not introduced then. And I don't know why. Maybe the salesmen weren't ready for it. I have no idea. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. And there are things that they ordered molds for that I'm not sure they even exist. All those Caprice things, there's I think 13 Caprice items. The molds were ordered and made, and nobody's ever seen any of them. That Jelly Comp is the first one to show up of all those pieces. And it's the same way with other lines. And they were adding to 3900 steadily. Even at the reopening, they were adding to the 3900 line. And of course, they didn't always make a new mold. It wasn't always a new mold. The Jenny Lynn line that came out at reopening was all retooled out of the Virginian line. A lot of the 3900 line stuff was made out of the 3500 line pieces. They didn't make an entirely new mold. They maybe just reconfigured the edge or took the leaves off the handles. They didn't sometimes make an entirely new mold. So it wasn't like they were churning out new molds like crazy. They were changing them. Anybody else? Yeah.
I was going to ask, the Cambridge Square there, there's a couple pieces in red, Carmen.
They were reopening.
They were reopening.
They are reopening. And that I know of, there was a lot of red Cambridge Square made by Imperial. And the way I have found that you can tell it is the Cambridge is either gorgeous polish on the bottom, or Cambridge had gotten pretty good at learning how to finish out of a mold where they did not have to polish, where there was no iron mark left. If you look at this guy, he still has an iron mark on the bottom. It's a black thing that they had to polish off. Cambridge had gotten so good at Georgian tumblers that they could finish them by rolling them without polishing the bottoms. So most of the Cambridge Square and Carmen that is really Cambridge is smooth on the bottom, is not polished. The Imperial pieces are polished and they are not fire polished. They're left matte, a matte polish. And most Carmen Cambridge Square is not Cambridge. Most of it is Imperial. Most of it's Imperial. Anybody else?
There's gold encrusted daffodil. Doesn't seem to be any gold encrusted rosalyn or magnolia.
I've never seen a piece of magnolia or rosalyn.
Any stem wear in any three of the lines.
There is one footed tumbler in daffodil known that Lisa has, and it came from a worker. But I've never heard of a rosalyn or magnolia gold encrusted. No. We thank everybody for bringing. I'm amazed at how many pieces. This is wonderful. Thank you all so much for coming. If you feel you have to pick it up, be careful because it belongs to somebody else.
Let's thank Lynn for all his hard work putting
We
this together.
appreciate.